Hello viewers, and welcome to the Long Dark, the fourth adventure pack of the Dwarrowdelf cycle of adventure packs, and this is yet another installment of the LOTR LCG progression series, a production by Cardboard of the Rings, the bi-weekly podcast for the Lord of the Rings the card game, which is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. Joining you, as always, my name is Mitch, and with me is Matthew.
Hello?
So, Matthew, why don't you go ahead and bring us up to speed on where we are in our story?
After defeating the Watcher in the Water, our heroes have entered the mines of Moria, which is a dark labyrinth of narrow tunnels and wide passages, natural caves, and impressive caverns of dwarven workmanship. Our heroes must make their way eastward, discovering what they can about the orcs, and perhaps even meeting up with Balin for more information. But it is easy to get lost in the darkness.
So, the narrative for this scenario is represented in terms of game mechanics in something called the locate test. So, to represent the high likelihood of our party of adventurers getting lost in the vast and intricate underground domain of Moria, we have this new mechanic which involves players discarding cards from their hand, essentially expending resources to kind of ensure that they're finding their way, that they're on the right track, and that they haven't gotten completely lost in the depths of Khazad-dûm. So, I'll go into more detail regarding this mechanic once we go through our setup and possibly reveal some cards that cause us to actually do one of these locate tests, but for the time being, why don't we go ahead and start off by taking a look at our player decks. So, starting with myself, I'm as always going to be running Dane Ironfoot, since Matthew and I are playing with plenty of dwarf characters. I have Éowyn for very potent willpower capability, but something very important to keep in mind is that almost under no circumstance whatsoever would I consider using her ability, just because having a lot of cards in hand is of extreme importance during this scenario. That's why I'm going to be using Beravor probably each and every turn, just to ensure that Matthew and I have as many cards as possible, and therefore as many opportunities as we can get to pass these very nasty locate tests. I've got a smattering of dwarven allies here, like the Hammersmith to return Ancient Matham to my hand, just so I can again ensure as much card draw as possible. I'm putting our new Warden of Healing to great use, and I'm including a lot of dwarves in this deck to try and take advantage of Legacy of Durin. I've got plenty of readying effects, a lot of willpower effects, a lot of different cancellation effects, and as much card draw specifically as I can possibly cram into this Tri-Sphere deck. And how about you, Matthew?
I'm playing with my trusty trio of dwarves, Gimli, Thalin, and Dwalin. Let's see, I included the new Erebor Battlemaster from the Long Dark Adventure Pack, so I'm anxious to see him pull his weight. Otherwise, my deck is relatively similar to some of the previous ones I've used. Ancient Matham is for card draw. I've included 3 of just about every single card, that way I'm not running 1s or 2s, because those are probably cards I wouldn't want to discard anyway. So hopefully between Mitch and I, we'll have enough card draw to pass these treacherous locate tests.
Alright, well, I suppose we might as well go ahead and make myself the first player. Before we actually set up our scenario, why don't we go ahead and make sure to shuffle our player decks and draw our opening hand of 6 cards, hoping for the best. And it looks like I kind of have an interesting smattering of stuff. You know, this probably isn't the absolute best hand that I could hope for this deck, but in the interest of not wanting to draw something worse, I think I'm going to go ahead and keep this one. And how is your hand looking?
Mine's about the same. It's not horrible, it's not fantastic, but I think that I will hold on to it.
Alright, so I suppose we might as well go ahead and move on to actually setting up our scenario. So Quest Phase 1A here reads, the first player attaches Cave Torch to a hero of his choice. So as the first player, I've gone ahead and stuck this Cave Torch to Beravor. So, just like in the Into the Pit video, this Cave Torch is an objective that allows us to exhaust it in order to put up to 3 progress tokens on any dark location. It does have a little bit of a drawback where you have this forced effect. So after the Cave Torch exhausts, you have to discard the top card of the encounter deck, and if it's an enemy, we add it to the staging area. This encounter deck is something like 30% enemies, so Cave Torch still seems like it's going to be a pretty reliable effect to get a few bonus progress tokens without putting too many additional enemies into play. I went ahead and picked Barivore for the target of this, just because it is a restricted attachment, and unlike Dane Ironfoot, I think Barivore is very unlikely to come across any restricted attachments, and she's a little bit hardier than Eowyn. But we might as well go ahead and take a look at Quest Phase 1B, and this is 13 quest points, and it reads, when revealed, discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard X locations, where X is one less than the number of players in the game, a minimum of 1. Add those locations to the staging area and shuffle the other discarded cards back into the encounter deck. And this also has the effect each location gets +1 threat. If the player's quest unsuccessfully, trigger all lost effects in play. And this lost mechanic is essentially kind of a passive activated ability that sits on enemies and locations, so while they're in the staging area, this lost effect doesn't actually do anything until we're instructed to trigger it, like if we quest unsuccessfully. But, to finish setting up this scenario, why don't we start discarding cards off of the top of the encounter deck? So verifying that it is indeed shuffled. Let's see, our first discarded card is a Cave Spider, not a location. Our second card is another Cave Spider, not a location. Our third card is not a location. Our fourth card is a location, so Dwarven Forge. So let's go ahead and add this to the staging area. We'll put these other encounter cards in the encounter deck and shuffle it, and at this point we're ready to start the game. So,
well, I think our starting drawback is that the Dwarven Forge is one of the very few, very rare pass cards in the deck. So it sort of sucks to start with that on the table.
Right, so the fact that one of these is already sitting in play means that when we try and do a locate test, we have a less than 23% chance of passing for each card that we discard, so we definitely could have had a rougher start. This isn't a great start, but be that as it may, why don't we go ahead and start our very first turn. So let's do our resources, and let's draw a card. I ended up drawing a Spirit Readying attachment, so let's see. I suppose I'll spend one resource off of Barivore for an Erebor Record Keeper, and I think that's all I'm going to do. How about yourself?
Okay, for my planning phase, I am going to spend 2 for a Veteran Axan, and that is it for me.
Alright, well, now that we've both put an ally into play, let's go ahead and do questing. And I suppose I should have thought about maybe having one of us draw a couple cards before we did our planning, but I think at the present moment I'm going to trigger Barivore for myself. I ended up drawing one of our new healing characters, and for committing to the quest, I'm going to go ahead and do Record Keeper and Eowyn for a total of 6. And how about yourself?
I will send Thalin for 2. And then I will send Dwalin for an additional 2, for a total of 4.
Alright, so let's see what we pull off the top of the encounter deck. I guess card number 1 is a Chance Encounter. So put the top enemy in the encounter discard pile into play, engaged with the first player. If it puts no enemies into play, it gains Surge. So it is going to Surge, and it is replaced by a Burning Low. So when revealed, each enemy and location currently in the staging area gets +1 threat until the end of the phase, +3 if it is a dark location.
Ooh.
So I could cancel this with the Cave Torch, or we could stomach that +3 threat. Should I go ahead and just exhaust my Cave Torch to cancel this effect?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and exhaust my Cave Torch, so this effect is cancelled. I'll get rid of it. The card discarded by Cave Torch is not an enemy, so cool. That's just going to go in the discard pile. And our second encounter card revealed is going to be A Sigil Mineshaft. So this is going to be a 5-threat location. Again, we have to keep in mind that because of our current quest card, each location in play gets +1 threat. So this is going to be 6 and 3 for a total of 9, and it looks like we are going to make a single quest token. So we did not quest unsuccessfully, but we hardly made any progress. I guess for travel, shall we go to this 6-threat mineshaft?
Sure.
Alright, so I'm not too concerned about that lost effect, so let's make that the active location. There's no engaging to be done. I suppose shall we skip to refresh?
Yep.
Alright, so let's go ahead and Control R. I'll go ahead and make you the first player. Let's do our resources and draw a card. And I think I'm going to have Barivore trigger once again on myself. And before you play anything, I'm going to go ahead and do a Campfire Tales, and let's both draw another card. And I've now got a Cancel Shadow effect. But what are you going to be playing for planning?
So I am going to put Unexpected Courage on Gimli.
Okay.
My hope here is to send him to the quest and then ready him. And then I'm also, just because I have the resources to spare, I'm going to put a Horn of Gondor on Dwallin. I don't expect this to be going off too much this game, but any little bit will help. And so that is it for me.
Okay, I guess I could certainly put another Unexpected Courage into play, but in the interest of leaving spirit resources open, I think I'm not going to bother doing that. Let's see. I guess I'm going to pay 1 spirit resource off of Eowyn, and I'm going to go ahead and attach an Ancient Matham to our Sigil Mineshaft in the active location slot, and I think that's all I'm going to do.
Okay.
So shall we go ahead and move on to questing?
Yep, I will send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and do my standard 6, so that's going to be a total of 13 this round, and let's go ahead and see what we reveal. So encounter card number 1 is a Vast and Intricate. So this is going to be the first player makes a locate test. If this test is failed, raise each player's threat by 7, remove all 1 progress tokens from play, and trigger all lost effects in play. So I don't really want to boost our threat by 7, though it certainly wouldn't be the end of the world. The lost effects in play aren't too nasty. We'd pick and discard a card. I guess, shall I cancel this, or do we just want to gain 7 threat?
I would have a cancellation effect for next turn should we need it. I can't cancel anything this turn because I use my spirit resources, but 7 threat to me is pretty scary, especially since there's multiples of these in the deck, so I would rather not go up to 37 myself.
Alright, well then why don't I go ahead and spend 1 resource off of Eowyn, and I'm going to go ahead and throw a Test of Will into play. Okay. So let's get rid of that, let's get rid of a Test of Will, and let's go ahead and draw our second encounter card, which is a Stray Goblin.
And we would not have passed, so at least not with our first card.
Right, so Stray Goblin takes 1 damage from Thalon. This is going to be a total of 5 threat that we're up against. Shall I use Cave Torch prior to quest resolution to maybe help us make an additional few progress tokens?
Sure.
Alright, so why don't I go ahead and exhaust the Cave Torch, put 3 progress tokens on Sigil Mineshaft, and let's go ahead and discard an encounter card, which is an enemy. So this is going to be a total of 3, 4, 5, 6 threat that we're up against. We've contributed a total of 13 to the quest, which means we're going to make a total of 7 progress. So 2 is going to be absorbed by the Sigil Mineshaft, and that is going to mean we have a total of 6 progress tokens on our current quest card. So Sigil Mineshaft is explored, and Ancient Matham triggers, allowing you to draw 3 cards. So let's see what you get. Anything good?
You know, stuff to discard, I suppose.
Alright. And maybe it gets you a little bit closer to drawing some good stuff. So, for travel, shall we go to the Dwarven Forge?
Yeah, sure.
Alright, so we'll make that the active location. For engagement, this rock adder is a little bit different because it cannot be attacked unless it is dealt damage. Dane is not going to be able to take any damage without the help of some shadow effects, so do you want the rock adder and I'll take the goblin?
Yep, sounds good.
Alright, so I'll bring the goblin to me and rock adder for you. I'm going to go ahead and do shadow cards as follows. And how do you want to deal with the rock adder?
I will have Gimli defend.
Alright, so its shadow card is another pass card.
Yeah.
So now I think we've got something like 12 or 13 of these left. Gimli's going to end up taking 1 damage. For me, I definitely want to keep Dane ready so that your veteran axe hand can kill that rock adder. So I'm going to do an undefended attack. So 2 attack strength. There is a shadow effect, and I am the last player. So this will be 4 damage to Dane unless I cancel this shadow effect. Of course, I don't have the resources to do that, and Dane is going to go ahead and take, let's see here, total of 4 points of damage. So how do you want to deal with rock adder?
Well, since you were so kind to leave Dane ready, my veteran axe hand has just enough.
Alright, so the rock adder takes 3 points of damage, and it is killed. Unfortunately, even though Dane could attack this stray goblin, he doesn't have enough attack power by himself to kill it. I don't suppose you have any sort of attack bolstering event?
I sure don't.
Alright, well, not a problem. So let's go ahead and Control R to refresh, if you would be so kind as to make me the first player. So I'll go ahead and draw 1 card, which is a new spirit attachment. I'll go ahead and do 1 resource to each of my characters. I'll have Barivore draw me a couple cards. I finally ended up getting what I was really wanting, so I'll pay 2 resources off of Dane, and I'm going to go ahead and put a Steward of Gondor on, I think, Eowyn. I'll go ahead and trigger that right away to boost up her resources by 2. I'm going to go ahead and pay 2 spirit resources for an Unexpected Courage on Dane Ironfoot, and I'm going to pay 2 lore resources for a Warden of Healing. I will also pay 0 spirit resources for an Ever My Heart Rises, and I think I'm going to go ahead and put this on Thalin?
Yeah, sure.
Alright, so I'll go ahead and slap that on Thalin. So as soon as we travel to a mountain or underground location, like our Dwarven Forge here, he readies and you get to drop your threat by 1.
Nice.
So I've still got 8 cards in my hand, you've got 10 in yours. I've got plenty of stuff to ditch to a locate test, should we pass our quest phase anytime soon. But I guess that's all for my planning. How about you?
I'm not playing a thing.
Alright, well, let's go ahead and do questing. And for me, I'm going to do 6, and I'm going to also contribute Dane for a total of 8.
I will do my 7 once again.
Alright, so this is going to be a total of 15. Let's go ahead and stage a couple of encounter cards. So card number 1 is yet another rock adder. So right away, Thalin's ability triggers. Card number 2 is the Mountain's Roots. So this is an underground location. So we're going to be up against a total of 3/4 threat, which means we're going to make 11 progress. We could use the Cave Torch to add a couple points here, but it looks like the Dwarven Forge is going to soak up 4 out of those 11, which leaves us with 7, which is exactly enough to finish off our current quest card here. So I suppose we don't need to use Cave Torch at all. So let's go ahead and do 4 progress tokens on Dwarven Forge, which is explored. Let's do 7 progress tokens on Journey in the Black Pit, and we pass on to Quest Card 2A and Quest Card 2B. So this reads, the first player makes a locate test. If this test is failed, reveal cards from the encounter deck equal to the number of players in the game and add them to the staging area. Then trigger all lost effects in play. So let's go ahead and make our first locate test here. So I have to discard 1 card from my hand and then 1 card from the encounter deck. Let's see, I think I'm going to go ahead and discard a Miner of the Iron Hills And the card from the encounter deck is not a pass card. Even though there aren't any lost effects currently in play, in the interest of trying to prevent revealing another couple encounter cards, I'm going to keep getting rid of some of the less useful stuff in my hand here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of a second Miner of the Iron Hills and discard another non-pass card. I'll get rid of a Sigil Miner, and I'll get rid of another non-pass card. I've got a sneak attack in my hand, but I don't have any allies. So I think I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. And I discard a pass card perfectly. So at this point, we've passed that locate test. Let me discard those 4 cards and discard those 4 encounter cards. So we end up passing this locate test. So we do not reveal a number of encounter cards equal to the number of players in the game. We do not trigger all lost effects. But if we quest unsuccessfully, we have to trigger all lost effects in play. And if we defeat this stage, we have won the game. So for travel, we've got the option of the Mountain's Roots, which is an underground location which will ready Thallin.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so let's go ahead and travel there. For engagement, we've got this rock adder. Yep, and be sure to drop your threat like you just did. Do you want the rock adder?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so let's go ahead and put rock adder down on your side of the table. Let me go ahead and do our shadow cards. So 1 for me as the first player, and a 2nd for you. And for this stray goblin, I think I'm going to go ahead and do another undefended attack. So the shadow effect is attacking enemy gets plus X attack, where X is the number of players in the game. This would make it attack strength 4, which would be lethal. I'm going to go ahead and pay 1 spirit resource for a hasty stroke. And maybe this was a little bit wasteful here, but I'm going to go ahead and cancel that shadow effect. And I'll assign 2 points of damage to, I suppose, Barivore. And how do you want to deal with Rock Adder's attack?
Same as last time. I will use Gimli.
Alright, so Gimli. And it does not have a shadow effect, so it's going to deal 1 more point of damage to Gimli. And I'm going to go ahead and trigger my Warden of Healing to strip 1 point of damage off of Barivore and 1 point of damage off of Dane. So how do you want to deal with your Rock Adder here?
I suppose since you can't do any damage to your guy, that I will use Thallin is just enough.
Alright, so Thallin swings for 3, and the Rock Adder is going to be killed. So its shadow card is discarded right away. At the end of the round, this Massing in the Deep is also discarded. Again, I probably should have just defended with Dane, since you had 2 very capable characters left, but shouldn't end up making too much of a difference. I suppose, shall we refresh?
Yep.
Alright, so refresh. That automatically boosts our threat. I'll go ahead and make you the first player. I'll draw 1 card, I'll do my resources, I'll trigger my steward, and what are you going to be doing for planning?
So I'm going to pay 2 for a Gondorian Spearman.
Great, that'll make short work of my stray goblin here.
And that is all that I can do.
Okay, so for me, I'm going to go ahead and have Barivore draw me a couple cards. I ended up getting another... Let's see here, another Unexpected Courage, and a Sigil Miner. We've got to make 17 quest progress, and we've got a 2 quest point location in our active slot. So it looks like it might be another couple rounds before we end up winning, if we're lucky. Let's see, I've got that Unexpected Courage. I could certainly slap that on character, or I could just go ahead and put the Sigil Miner into play. I think at the present moment I'm just going to put into play that Sigil Miner for another couple willpower. And I think that's all I'm going to be doing.
Okay, I'm going to send 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Alright, total of 8. I'm going to end up doing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 myself. So it looks like that's going to be a total of 18, and I guess we'd technically need 19 to pass this quest phase. We've got our Cave Torch, we've got a Secret Paths, but It's looking like it's probably going to be another round here. So for staging, card number 1 is a Great
Ooh.
Cave Troll. So a 2-threat enemy, 38 engagement cost. This is probably going to be sitting in the staging area for a little while, but it does take a damage from Thalon. Card number 2 is a Gathering Ground. So when revealed, attach this card to a location in the staging area with the highest combined threat and remaining quest points.
There's nothing.
Yeah, is no location in the staging area, so I guess this just gets discarded.
It fizzles, yeah.
Alright, so this is a 1-copy card in the deck. It is a pass card, and it's normally extremely strong, but this is just gone. It looks like we're up against a total of 2 threats. We've sent...
Well, hold up. Surprise, surprise. I have an untroubled by darkness.
Perfect. And it looks like we just so happen to have an underground location in our location slot here.
Every once in a while I can time these things pretty well, Mitch.
Yeah.
So that was sort of on purpose. But yeah.
Alright, so let's see here. I guess, how many dwarf characters did you send? I sent 3, which is going to bring me to a total of 16 committed to the quest.
So I'm adding 4 dwarf characters, but because it is an underground location, I get to double that to 8. So I'm sending 16.
Alright, so it looks like all of a sudden we have 32 committed to the quest. Of course, this Greater Cave Troll drops that down to 30. The Mountain's Roots absorbs 2 of those, and that means we're going to end up putting 28 progress tokens on our current quest card out of the 17 required to complete it. So it looks like at this point, we have not quested unsuccessfully. We've managed to avoid triggering any lost effects in play. We have defeated this stage, and we have won the game. So, Matthew, any final thoughts about the Long Dark scenario?
Well, you know, when we started, we were discussing, gosh, this is a difficulty 7. And I sort of, I guess, expected it to be a little bit harder, perhaps to get more of those locate tests, which I never had to do any. We only had the 1. You know, we had enemies every round, which I suppose the Rock Adder was kind of fun. You know, just different and interesting. But gosh, I mean, you know, we did have some handy cancellations. You know, our threat might have gone up by 7. But a lot of the treacheries, just whether we had cancellation effects or not, wouldn't have done anything. It was sort of cool to see Ever My Heart Rises work at least once. It probably would have worked a lot more had the game gone on, but, you know, it didn't. So I feel like this has been a lot like some of our other videos, over before it even begins. So, you know, I think it was fun, but maybe I would have enjoyed it more if it went on a few rounds.
You know, I suppose before we finish up the game here, I might as well, just to boost our score slightly, trigger this Warden of Healing in between, you know, staging and quest resolution to strip another couple points off of Barivore and Dane. This is kind of a really tricky scenario in that there's certainly quite a few potent cards in this deck, like that treachery card Foul Air, where you're forced to make a locate test, and if you fail it, all characters in play end up taking 2 damage. That would have been enough to kill almost any character on the board, with the exception of many of our heroes. The primary difficulty in this quest is having to overcome those locate tests, just because it's such a low probability occurrence. We designed these decks to have a lot of card draw just because it's almost banging your head against the random number generator trying to pass those tests. So when you've got something like a 20% chance, the more opportunities you can give yourself to win, whether you're discarding Lure of Moria, like I was considering doing, or just some sort of zero-cost piece of junk in your hand, or some duplicate of a unique that you're not going to end up using. It's just kind of a crapshoot as to whether this scenario is very difficult or not. When we had to make our 1 locate test of the game, you know, we kind of asked ourselves, is it worth even bothering to try? You know, we could probably stomach a couple additional encounter cards being added, as opposed to just discarding a bunch of stuff. We never really encountered any really nasty lost effects that could have been triggered, so the Long Dark is certainly a very short scenario. It's probably not the most entertaining we've ever had, and I've certainly had experiences where those locate tests just end up being extraordinarily frustrating experiences for the players.
I mean, it really was Untroubled by Darkness that won it for us. So the dwarves are a powerhouse, especially when it comes to questing, and having an underground location really just sort of put us over the edge. So I think more than anything, that was the card that helped us be victorious.
Yeah, I definitely think it's really a far cry from how I originally approached this game when I, opened up my core set, and something like Secret Paths was probably one of the least exciting cards to include, and when I was first playing through Khazad Doom, I certainly wasn't too enthusiastic about cards like Untroubled by Darkness, but just like we saw in this video, for the mere cost of 2 resources, the exact same as my Sigil Miner that was contributing 2 willpower to the quest, I think we added a total of 14 from that one card effect. If I would have needed to, Secret Paths for the cost of 1 would have maybe, added the equivalent of 5 willpower for us. So if you're able to build a couple really synergistic decks, the potency of some of these cards is just absolutely ridiculous, and I'll be very curious to see as we continue progressing forward into more modern content, are we going to be able to keep up these kind of very quick one-shot, one-kill scenario playthroughs?
My guess is no.
Well, hopefully at the very least it'll make some more interesting content for our viewers.
Absolutely.
But I think this brings this very short play of The Long Dark to a close, so as always, thank you guys so much for checking out another entry in the LOTR LCG progression series. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. Feel free to leave a comment below letting us know what your own experiences of The Long Dark have been like. If you just so happen to have had the unfortunate experience of making a twisting passage, perhaps your active location, be sure to let us know all about it. But next up is going to be our look at the new hero and 9 new player cards of the Foundations of Stone Adventure Pack, so we'll see you guys again soon.
Maybe we should rename this quest the Short Dark.